April here. Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited that you're here. It is spring break here in Texas, so I do apologize if you hear the kiddos in the background. I have a great video for you today. We are going to be talking about writing myths. So this video is a part of the 12 Writers, 12 Myths, and 12 Weeks series of Writers Debunking Writing Myths. So the myth that I am going to be tackling today is that drafting your novel is the hard part. So we will get right into that in just a few minutes, but I do want to take a minute to let you know that the channels are linked down below for the other authors and writers in this series so that you can go ahead and check out the videos that are already done and the ones that will be upcoming in the next few weeks. So please take a few moments to watch those videos to kind of tune into this, because is there a possibility that you have been unknowingly embracing a writing myth? If so, writing myths, they can really wreak havoc on your writing if you are embracing something that isn't particularly true. Now, a lot of the myths you'll find, they're rooted in some kind of facts. And that's where we're going to get right into this one. But I want to know, and leave this in the comments below, is there a writing myth that really disturbs you? Is there a writing myth that you have bought into in the past? Or is there a possibility that you have already discovered that you're following and tuned into one of the myths in this particular series? So please let me know in the comments below your experience with writing myths. Subscribe to my channel. You can ring the little bell so that you will be notified when I post new writing videos. So let's get into it. So drafting your novel is the hard part of writing. No, reality check. Drafting your novel is no walk in the park, guys. It's not easy. But to say that that is the hardest part of writing is just completely untrue. And when I really started thinking about this myth and kind of researching it and digging to it, first I was thinking, okay, so what is the hardest part of writing? But when you get right into it, the hardest part of writing is going to vary depending on the writer. It's going to depend on the manuscript itself. It's going to depend on skill level. It's going to depend on experience, and it's going to depend on what is going on in that writer's life at that point. So you can't definitively just go in and say drafting is the hardest part of your novel. Now, here is the fun part, and what I have found to be true in my writing is that the hardest part of writing is often whatever step you are on currently. Yeah. So there you go. I think that's because I think Mandy Lynn mentioned this in her previous video. You know, you kind of tend to forget about how hard the prior steps were when you get to that, and there's definitely truth to that. So where did this myth evolve from, that drafting your novel is the hardest part? Well, and I think because for many writers, and especially if you are a new writer, if this is your first novel, if it's your first manuscript, or even your first few, getting that first draft written can certainly seem very difficult and very time consuming because there is so much to get into it. Now, just to give you just a little taste of where I am coming from and how I am kind of debunking this myth for you, I'm going to use my own experience. I am now a published author, which is super exciting, and you can check out my book, Writing Prompts Decoded. I'm super excited about that, but this was not the first book that I have written. Far from it. I have actually completed, start to finish, before this book, 7 different books. None of them were nonfiction except for this one. So that's interesting. Most of them did not make it past the first draft stage. They were completed. This is the end. I can't even count for you how many manuscripts never made it to the end. They never made it past that initial drafting stage. So yes, when you look at that, you can see that the number of unwritten and unfinished manuscripts that are floating around out there that drafting can definitely seem like the hardest part of writing when you look at it from that aspect. However, because I have already written 7 different manuscripts in the past, start to finish, for me, at this point, when I went in to write Everside last year, writing the first draft was challenging, but it was not the hardest part of writing. The hardest part of writing at that stage for me was going to be the editing phase, the revision phase, taking that product that I had drafted and crafting it into something for the reader. Because a lot of times your first draft is going to be written primarily for you. A lot of other people, hopefully not a lot of people, are going to read your first draft. So you really can allow yourself some grace when you are writing that first draft, shaking the camera there, that you don't have to put all of this pressure. And I think a lot of people put so much pressure on their first drafts that is kind of where this myth comes from, because they're trying to make perfection in their first draft, and that is just not going to happen. It is just not the purpose of the first draft of your novel. So if you are really struggling, if drafting your novel feels like the hard part, know that it is hard and that's okay. But are you making it too hard on yourself? Are you trying to make a first draft into a finished product in the first try? Wow. If you're trying to do that, I can see where this myth would apply there, because you just can't do that in your first draft. I mean, there probably are some writers out there who can, but I don't know of any. So let's move on to the second part of my story. So what I was struggling with wasn't writing my first draft, but it was revision. It was making the story, recrafting it. It was tying up and finding those plot holes and all of those things. That was what I found challenging with that book. Now, let's move on to my published book, my writing prompts book. The actual writing of the first draft of this book just flowed out of me. It was not all that complicated. It was not all that hard. When I went into the drafting stage, wasn't really even planning to write this book. It's a book that just kind of gave birth to itself. It flowed nicely. Then in the revisions stage and the editing stage, which was the most challenging and is still the most challenging part of Everside because it is not completed yet, this was easier. It wasn't as hard. There were still unique challenges. The hardest part of this book was going to be some of the technical aspects of the self-publishing process. And that's because that was new to me. It's not something that I had done before this. I had researched it, but I'm the type of person that I can research something to death, absorb the information, but until I actually go through all the steps, I don't really feel like I own it, like I know it, till I do it. So that was the most challenging part of this particular book. So the reason that I'm talking to you about this is to show you that the hardest part of writing is going to vary very much on the type of manuscript that you are writing. It is going to depend on the situation that you are in. If you are facing a lot of outside challenges, then that may make a particularly normal part of your writing may be much more complicated because of that. So when you factor in all of these things, the hardest part of writing is really going to vary. And I'm not sure that there is any definitive hard part straight across the board for everybody. It is definitely going to depend. One thing that I have found about writing, and when you are writing regularly, is that sometimes the hardest part can be when you step away to take a break. You go on vacation, you get sick. Getting back into writing, sometimes that can be the hardest part of writing, or the editing phase can be the hardest part. If you have previously written novels in first person and you switch to third person, then there may very well be that that's the hardest part of writing for you at that time. So as you write and as you grow, your skill grows, your confidence grows, you know what you're doing. But that's what's great about writing, is because there's always something to learn. There's always something to challenge you. I just encourage you today that if you're just really feel like getting that first draft of your novel is the hard part, and why should you keep going, to just push through it. Now, here is the reality check. If you've bought into this myth, you are not going to be prepared for step 2, revision and editing. No, I was not prepared. I did not know what to do with my manuscript. After the first stage, I didn't know how to go about critique partners and beta readers and feedback and plot holes and what to do with it after I got it back from my developmental edit from the editor. I mean, there are just so much more to producing a novel than you will find in the first draft stage. So I invite you to get that novel written, get that first draft out there. Embrace and be prepared for the next stage of learning, and don't let it stop you when you do get to a particular part of the writing process that seems particularly hard. Because as you do it and you get more experience, it will likely become easier. So guys, that is what I have for you today. I hope that this has enlightened you a little bit. If you can relate to this or any of the other writing myths out there, if they've impacted you in some way, I would absolutely love to know about it. So please, please leave me some information in the comments below. And I encourage you just to push through to whatever part of writing that you are on. If it feels hard, know that you are not alone and you will get through it, and it will get, writing doesn't get easier, I would say, but parts of it become easier as you go along. Don't forget that my writing prompt book, that you can see here in the background, is now available on ebook, and I would absolutely love that if you're interested in, if you need some writing prompts, that this is actually a book that you can use alongside whatever you are working on. So if you're kind of stuck in your writing process, if you're finding some difficulties, if you just need some inspiration as you're writing your draft, this is definitely a great companion to have by your side. So as always, guys, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to check out all the other videos in this series. And I will see you next time with another great writing video. Bye.